Here we are, another Resonance Radio podcast conversation with Keith Whitten.
Thomas Spellman.
Talking about monad.
Beautiful.
Should we just get into it? Let's just look at it.
All right,
we're looking at it. What do we got?
This is the first of the tour screens. We got a tour with 20 slides. Should we go through the tour?
Yeah, go ahead. So wait, let's take a look at this first. So the solar system is a great man. Man is a small solar system.
That's sort of a paraphrase of an old Sufi saying that the universe is a great man. Man is a small universe. And I think that's true also, but I also think that this is like an intermediate step, which is useful to also point out how the solar system is a living organism, and that we have a complementary, it says here, monad is a new paradigm in astrobiology. Solar system is a photosynthetic organism on a cosmic scale, and we humans have a physiology and organization complementary to the solar system as a whole. So now the rest of the app is going to show you how that works.
Okay.
So I'll show you the next slide. Where's my cursor?
Here it is.
There it is. So this is the, that looks strange, huh?
I don't know. If you move it around, does it make more sense? I think it may be just Pluto. It's because Pluto's got a weird orbit.
Yeah. So this is ordinary depiction of the solar system, just a sun-centered with these are the orbits and their orbital pathways at the appropriate proportionate distances. So astronomical units, like here's Saturn. You can see this guy right here is at about 10.4 astronomical units, which is one astronomical unit is the distance from the sun to the Earth. So then the next slide takes us in here, and I think he's backwards. There we go. So this is the monad presentation here, and you can see this figure here. And it's the idea that we can move the outer planets and their orbital pathways inwards towards the sun, where they coincide with the location of chakras. And a chakra is defined as an organizational field center, with the idea that each planet emanates a magnetosphere or some form of field which provides information about how to build the organ system that corresponds to that portion of the body, of a human body. And so that's the idea. And the Earth, here let me finish reading this. Monad is based on a novel theory of chakras, where each planet and the sun is a ruler of a particular chakra in the body. Planet Earth is a ruler of the heart chakra. And monad, we'll get to it, is what allows us to measure the biorhythms of the Earth chakra, the planetary biorhythms. So here we are, and this is just to point out some of the features of monad. Monad has a strange orientation. So you can see here that this black object here is actually the axis, the spin axis of the Earth. So it's the North Pole. And if you look over the back here, that's the South Pole right there. And the arrow is pointing out our location here. This is America. North America, you can see here, is Alaska. And that green dot is located here in Northern California, where we're doing the podcast at. So, and also, I'm just pointing out here that I'm saying that this solar system being is a photosynthetic organism, and I'm pointing out that the biosphere of Earth is a predominantly plant-based biosphere. 99.5% of the biomass of the biosphere on planet Earth is plant-based. if you include also the microorganisms in the soil which allow plant growth to take place. So animals, insects, people, cows, whatever, make up a very small fraction of the actual biomass of the biosphere. And it's a photosynthetic organism, is what I'm saying. That this solar being with the sun as the brains it's releasing light in the same way that that light is then used to fuel or drive photosynthetic processes in the same way that oxygen is used to drive the physiology of our body. So it's a complementary physiology and organization. So let's hit the next. Now we move out a little bit here, and we're talking about we remove the body here, and we're just going to focus on monad as a calendar clock. It's basically it's a like a heart monitor. It's like if the heart is the Earth is a heart planet, monad is the heart monitor to which allows you to measure the biorhythms of that heart chakra. So there's the primary photosynthetic biorhythms are the solar day, the lunar month, and the seasonal year. And all of these have a profound influence on plants. They all involve the distribution of light from the sun. So you have this circle of illumination. You can see this, which separates the light half from the dark half here. And that varies the amount of light that the plants are getting as the Earth is rotating. And the moon is also providing, you don't see the moon yet, but it also goes through phases and provides light during the nighttime, which plants are sensitive to. And the seasons also have a big impact on the amount of light that you get at different ends of the Earth.
And so, I mean, this view that we're looking at here seems like it's really emphasizing this idea, like really trying to put us, like you have the sign, you are here, and there's a clock face, and then there's the sun. So there's the Earth, there's the sun, and there's you are here, and then a clock face. So it seems like this is getting at kind of an essential statement. Like, what is the essential statement here, or our idea of this view? Like, I mean, it seems like this is emphasizing the relationship of where we are on the planet in relation to the sun as a concept of time.
Yeah, I mean, there's two things going on here. One is for plants. If you look at this as a distribution of light for plants, they're passing through this light field. Half of the time they're in the light, and then half of the time they're in the dark. Humans also are affected by the same biorhythms, the same photosynthetic biorhythms, but we don't do photosynthesis, but we still sleep during the night and move around during the day. We're affected by the phases of the moon and the seasons. So there's two different ways of looking at this thing. And this 24-hour dial is a circadian dial. It's like one of the most important biorhythms for animals is called the circadian rhythm. And all of our, every process that goes on in our body has highs and lows. For instance, at noon is when we have the most energy, and we're secreting, serotonin or something. And then at midnight we are sleeping, and that's when different processes are taking place in our body. So different activities are favorable at different times of the day because our body is entrained with these biorhythms, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you were getting at?
I mean, I think I'm more just looking at just the nuts and bolts of this particular view. It's really emphasizing that relationship of, yeah, where we are in relation to the sun. And then I just want to point up that right now 13 is at the top.
Yeah.
Can you explain what's going on there? Why is I mean, on clocks 12 is usually at the top, so why is 13 at the top of this?
Yeah. It says over here, the second paragraph, also note that with monad, the Earth is always located directly below the sun, which is fixed at noon at the top of the dial. Now, noon is, most people would associate noon with noon, or 12 o'clock. But we've built this thing to account for daylight savings also. So daylight savings, they talk about you fall backwards in the fall and you spring forward, but what that really means, you can't just, the hour hand, we're going to see the hour hand soon on this clock here, and you can't just adjust the hour hand because that would involve rotating the Earth 15 degrees. So what we had to do is you have to change the numbers, and so it's a daylight savings shouldn't exist, to be honest.
I
with you, right?
agree. I hate daylight savings.
It's a contrived thing, and it requires,
so coercive.
Yeah, this is just an adjustment for daylight savings. It has nothing. If we didn't have daylight savings, this would be 12 all the time, and it would make perfect sense.
And our lives would be so much better. And what I love about this is it really shows just how arbitrary or how much of a projection our numbering system is on the actual reality. Like, obviously, like the sun being overhead is where we get the idea of noon.
Yeah.
And then we've created this kind of arbitrary numerical system of time, and then we started messing with it. Like, what? You change the numbers for what time of day it is, and suddenly everybody like shifts their whole lifestyle by an hour in relation to the sun. It's very bizarre, but I like this because it really makes it obvious that it's just a number game that we're doing with daylight savings.
Absolutely.
Especially
midnight the same way, right? Midnight is the middle of the night, but the middle of the night is,
right.
It's, if you look here on this thing, the number dial there's a place where it goes from white to black here at 20 and 6, right? And if this wasn't daylight, that would be at 19 and 5. In other words, if you count the hours here, there's about 14 hours of daylight and 10 hours of nighttime. That's related to the seasons. But if you split that down the middle, that's the middle of the night, and that says 1 here. So if you tell someone you're going to meet them at midnight, you'd have to meet them at 1 o'clock in the morning if you want to really talk about precisely. But most people at midnight, they're going to think that's 12 o'clock midnight. Right. It's not midnight, 12.
And the other interesting thing, like I was just very close to the equator.
Yeah.
And the days are 12 hours, night is 12 hours. Whereas here, because we're further north, we have more like 14 hours of day and 10 hours of night. So like that position of that white line, the boundary between day and night, changes depending on where you are on the planet.
Right.
North or south.
I bet they didn't have daylight savings down there either.
No, they didn't. It was
why
very
would you
nice.
have daylight savings at the equator?
It's
totally
irrelevant.
Yeah.
All right.
So yeah, next slide is we set this Earth spinning, and this is this is very rapidly spinning. I mean, the Earth rotates or advances about 15 degrees per hour. So, and it rotates in this direction here. If you look, this is rotating what we consider to be counterclockwise, right? So, and also you may have noticed that the numbers are advancing counterclockwise around the dial, and that bothers a lot of people because we're used to thinking of time as proceeding in a clockwise fashion, right? And if you switch around to the south hemisphere, then if you were to reverse the numbers here, you'd see that they are, once again, it's advancing in a clockwise fashion.
Mm-hmm.
But
so the southern hemisphere is better.
the southern hemisphere is more familiar.
It's more proper. It's more correct.
It's got the proper, unfoldment of time there. But there's nothing you can do about that. If you look here, the East Coast is going to set and rise before the West Coast,
mm-hmm.
because the Earth is rotating in a eastward direction.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what it is. It's counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere.
And why is the clock face clockwise? Like, what is the origin of that? Why did we
sundials?
Sundials.
Yeah, if you look at a sundial, you've got the gnomon, and the sun is rising over here in the east, and then it sets in the west.
Mm-hmm.
So we think of it's like if you look at the Prague calendar clock,
mm-hmm.
that they thought of the hand, the sun is like a hand moving across the face of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
So it was advancing clockwise. The sun is advancing clockwise.
Yeah, as the sun is moving from east to west, the shadow is moving kind of opposite of that.
Exactly. So it's also advancing clockwise.
Right.
So both the sun and the shadow are moving clockwise. So that's the direction that you think time is moving.
Huh.
Yep.
All right.
Okay, so the next one is, now we bring in the moon. And the moon is advancing in the same direction that the Earth is rotating, right?
Mm-hmm.
So once again, if you look from the south, it's now advancing clockwise. This is all just relative to where you're looking at it. And the moon advances about 13 degrees every 24 hours. So a lunar phase from 13 back to 13 or 12 without daylight savings is 29.5 days.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is now approaching a full moon, would be directly at midnight. And this is a waning moon over here, a half waning moon. And these used to be the weeks of the lunar month. You'd have 4 lunar weeks divided by the full moon, the half moons, and the dark moon.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got that on chakra mode. You can see how long each lunar week is, and it's useful for some people, witches and people like that that are interested. More people should be interested in all of these cycles, I would think. To me, it's fascinating to just be aware of them. It's like I like knowing where the moon is on the clock.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of nice to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, if we were to stop this now, and for instance, if you stop this and you notice that the hour hand is pointing directly at the moon,
mm-hmm.
what that means is if you go outside and you face south, the moon is going to be directly south of you. In other words, wherever this relationship holds precisely, if the hour hand is pointing away from the moon, that means that the moon is directly north, behind the Earth, back there. So it's precise. It's very precisely oriented.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm noticing that the moon is actually doing one rotation per orbit, which is accurate of the real moon. Because we're always seeing the same side of the moon, which is only possible because it's rotating to maintain that perspective. Yeah,
actually the moon is not rotating. It doesn't have any angular momentum to it. It's being swung around so that it's got like a bulge it's not a rotational bulge, which makes the oblique. It makes like a obtuseness to the. But that's.
Or what is it called? It's in like a gravity lock or something with the Earth.
Gravity lock. It's not actually a rotating body.
Technically, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So where is my?
Oops. Here's your cursor.
Here we go. So this is one of my favorite pictures here. Thomas built this out of some what do you call it, a wedge builder? This we call it the lattice, but this is a celestial sphere, and it's an Earth-centered celestial sphere. And you'll notice that it's it has a specific size. It is actually 2 astronomical units in diameter, this celestial sphere, because it's centered on the Earth and it passes through the sun. And 1 astronomical unit is by definition, the distance from the Earth to the sun. So it's 2 of those. And that's an important point because, people used to believe that, we used to be locked inside this celestial sphere, which we're going to get to in a minute. But in fact, let's get to that now. But the point is that this celestial sphere with this particular dimension is very useful because it gives us the proper size to, for instance, place this number dial. This number dial fits inside this 2 astronomical unit celestial sphere. So now we're going to go inside, and this is how we used to think of ourselves. We were inside the celestial sphere. Now we were on the Earth, and this is Earth sped up a lot so that you can see the moon whipping past here, and you can see these are the constellations along the ecliptic, because where's the sun? There's the sun. So the sun, if you can't see the stars relative to the sun, you can't, it's too bright, of course. But if you look off 90 degrees to where the sun is, you can see at sunset or sunrise, you can see where the constellations come up where the sun used to be. So then you can place where the sun is relative to that constellation, especially if you have instruments where you can, lock in what the angle is relative to the horizon. So then you can basically follow where the sun is, and it follows this strange pathway so that it, changes its latitude or its elevation relative to, sometimes it's higher in the sky than it is. During the winter it's low, during the summer it's high. Mm-hmm. And so they then figured out that it follows this circular plane, which is called the ecliptic. And so we've given special highlight to the constellations along the ecliptic. We've named 12 of them, and here they are. And right there where it crosses the celestial equator, you can also figure out the celestial equator pretty easily, because the stars don't change their they never vary in their angle above the horizon. The same star will always be at that same location, whereas the sun moves over that time period. So these stars along the celestial equator are the ones that they're always along the celestial equator. Mm-hmm. So, and I think who was it? Who was the guy who figured out the obliquity of the ecliptic? Was what's his name? I can't think of it. Eratosthenes, or no, Hipparchus.
Oh, Hipparchus.
Hipparchus, yeah, he's the one who. Anyway, so let's. I'm gonna.
So I guess one thought that comes up is I've noticed some time of year I can see Orion's belt, and then it seems like some time of the year I can't. So that's not because of the fact that it's at a different height. It's that's more of like the time of the year, like what time of year, because the sun is rotating through the full ecliptic. It's not that Orion is higher or lower off of the horizon. It's just the time of night that it's high in the sky depends, because it's only at night that I'm going to be looking for it. But part of the year, when the sun is in it or near it, then it's not going to be visible at night.
Right.
So it's more that it's rotating, let's say, at midnight every night through a full year. You're going to go through the full 360 view of the stars, but they're going to be basically just rotating along the celestial equator, not the ecliptic. Got it.
Yeah. Yeah. If you with the watch, if you went out every night at midnight,
Mm-hmm.
and if you had an observational, a gnomon, so that you could look precisely at the sky there, you would notice that at midnight, a star that was there at midnight one night would be over by about 1 degree the next night.
Mm-hmm.
They advance. There's 360 degrees in a circle,
Mm-hmm.
and there's 365 days in a year. So a little less than 1 degree, you would notice that those stars are shifting.
Mm-hmm.
Every midnight they're shifted about 1 more degree over.
Mm-hmm.
Because the
Interesting.
sun is advancing that way along the ecliptic.
Oh, the Earth is advancing that far along.
Well, yeah, actually,
its orbit.
Yeah, it's you have to think. We know from our perspective, we are looking at the sun moving relative to the background of the stars. But it's actually because we're moving around the sun that
Right.
it appears that the sun is moving
Right.
relative to the background.
And that's fascinating too. I guess I'm putting myself in the position of, let's say, prehistoric sky observers, and just like if you were doing a nightly, observation of the sky, keeping track of these things, you would notice like, the stars always move precisely through the sky in this path, but then the sun is doing this other thing where it's like throughout the year it's doing this north-south migration, whereas the stars aren't. So that's fascinating, just thinking about it in terms of observing it from that fundamental, like, what is it, first principles,
First principles.
Yeah.
I know you love first principles. And what's interesting is it's not just the sun, but it's also the moon. The moon also seems to follow very close to that ecliptic.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't behave like the stars, which move always at the same distance above the horizon.
Mm-hmm.
And also the planets do the same thing. It's like if you look in the sky, the stars are one thing. They have they're fixed relative to their other stars.
Mm-hmm.
But the sun, moon, and they discovered certain stars, they realized that those stars were moving, and they called those wanderers, which means planets.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how they discovered the planets,
Mm-hmm.
because they were points of light that were moving relative to the other stars.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right. And especially Venus, I would imagine it's like the easiest planet to observe.
Venus is the brightest thing in the sky besides yeah.
And yet it's also kind of mysterious because it generally stays closer to the sun. So it doesn't quite do the full migration through the whole sky, right?
Yeah, you'll never go out at midnight and look south and see Venus or Mercury, for instance, right? Whereas all the other planets, at some point, they will be in the southern sky.
Mm-hmm.
Mercury and Venus, you have to look. They're always somewhere in the northern sky,
Mm-hmm.
and they're within a certain distance of the sun. They never get further away than that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because now, obviously, we know why. It's like because those planets are orbiting the sun in orbits that are closer to than the Earth orbit is.
And speaking of that, I think, do you have
the next one is the oh, what happened?
Oops, we must have hit skip. I just moved the cursor out there, and then here, shall we start over? Or we could just go inside. We accidentally skipped out of the tour.
Can we go inside?
Yeah. There we go.
Okay. I think we're in.
So now I think if you just accelerate it, we could see the planets.
Yeah, there we go.
So we're seeing Mercury right there, obviously very close to the sun.
Yeah, here's Mercury right there. And watch this. It's
that's
advancing
about as far as it
prograde.
gets, and then it goes back
And then it goes
retrograde.
back. Here's Venus. It's coming along there. There goes Jupiter, and it's going to go all the way around But Mercury and Venus never get too far away from the sun.
And so what we're talking about is if you were to like turn around and face away from the sun,
Like
like
right there, there's Jupiter.
that would be like midnight.
Yep.
And so you can see Jupiter or some of the other planets.
There's midnight right there, 24.
Oh, yeah. You're just never going to see Mercury or Venus out there
No.
at midnight.
And you can see the moon. So this ladder-looking structure here is called the zodiac. And that's 10 degrees on either side of the ecliptic. And basically the planets, it's like here you can see Venus is, not right on the ecliptic, but it's within that ladder.
Mm-hmm.
It stays within there. The reason they are not on the ecliptic is because their orbital pathways are tilted relative to the Earth's orbital pathway a little bit. They're all very close together, but not exactly within the same orbital pathway.
Mm-hmm.
There's an average, which is the ecliptic.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. And then this next slide is very interesting because if you look here, these symbols here are the signs of the zodiac. So you've got, for instance, this one here is Sagittarius. Here's Capricorn. But if you look closely, if we can slow this down, you'll notice that the constellations are marked different from this is where it gets confusing for people, because 2,000 years ago they named these signs and constellations and they thought they were the same, right? It's like they figured, okay, it seems like we're going to name this constellation here and that one's associated with this time of year because the sun is in it at that time of year. I'm not doing a very good at explaining this because it's complicated.
They named portions of the sky based on the constellations that were there, but then associated it with the seasons.
Right.
So meaning the first constellation that the sun is in spring is Aries.
Right. That's right there. You can see. But now you notice that Pisces is in there.
The Pisces constellation is now in the sign of Aries.
Right.
Yeah.
And what happened was they discovered that the constellations are actually not fixed relative to the
seasons.
The seasons. Now, and it's not just the seasons, it's relative to locations in the sky at a particular time of the season.
Mm-hmm.
This is really complicated. Let's go into precession mode here. This will explain it better. So I'm gonna bring this down to here. If you hit this precession mode here, you can see here that this is the sun is currently this is called the ascending equinoctial node. And if you were to advance this, normally the sun appears to move along this ecliptic here, and it passes through this constellation of Pisces here, which is now in the sign of Aries. But in other words, this here is where is Aries? Here's
Aries is to the left, over there on
Aries is this
on Taurus. Yeah.
Tiny little constellation here, and Pisces is this big constellation, this green monster here. That used to be over here. Let me show you what this looks like. This is what precession is actually doing.
So looks like we're moving forward by hundreds of years.
Yeah, and if you look down at the bottom here, you can see, I think we're going to need to figure this out a little bit, how to present this better.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you want to restart the tour since we jumped out of the tour, or do you want to just? Okay, so it looks like we're looking at the opening screen of Monad, and let's talk a little bit about what it means. The solar system is a great man And man is a small solar system. What does that mean?
All right. Well, let me see. I think almost all religious systems talk about how man is made in the image of God, and the Sufis say that the universe is a great man and man is a small universe. And monad is provides, I guess, an intermediate step between the man and the universe, and says that the solar system is also can be considered a great man, or a model of that man is a model of the solar system. And so let me show you how that would work. And by the way, it says here that the solar system is a photosynthetic organism on a cosmic scale, and we humans have a physiology and organization complementary to the solar system as a whole. And that's an important part, because it's like that old saying, it's a Hermetic principle, that as above, so below. There's people have heard that, but they forget the rest of it, which is as above, so below, but in a different fashion, or in a complementary fashion. And so if you look at the next screen here, this is a typical picture of the solar system with its orbital pathways all the way out to Pluto here. And they're at their proportionate distances in terms of astronomical units. And then what monad does is it offers a different perspective, where we've arranged the orbits. They're still in the same order, but they're now placed at what's known as chakras. If you study any of the old mystical systems of philosophy or anatomy, they talk about chakras as centers in the body. And I'm convinced that the planets are emanating these electromagnetic fields, which are fields of information where the form and functionality of the planet is then complementary reflected into the form and function of a body organ system. And the planet Earth is the heart planet of the solar system. And it corresponds to the lungs, the digestive system, and the heart.
Okay. So I have a number of questions.
All right.
So one is, you said that the planets are emitting an electromagnetic fields. I mean, we know electromagnetic fields drop off at the square of the distance. Like, realistically, the chances of measuring even, the electromagnetic field of, let's say, Jupiter from here, like, it must be, as far as electromagnetic field is concerned, infinitesimally small amount of measurable amount of that. But I've heard you refer to it with a different term, though, of morphic resonance or morphogenetic field.
Yeah.
I think morphic resonance is
that's a
Sheldrake idea.
Yeah.
But there's overlap there even between those two definitions.
Yeah.
But so morphogenetic field, that to me is getting at a different layer of reality, more on the level of like quantum entanglement, or this what we're just currently barely beginning to realize is a different layer of symmetry or interconnectedness between point A and point B that we're just barely beginning to understand. Is that
absolutely? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess it's not the magnetosphere itself which is the morphogenetic field.
Mm-hmm.
It is a deeper level. It's like excuse me. It's like David Bohm talks about how he refers to this thing called a pilot wave, And he says that every particle has an associated wave um, that is extends out to infinity, basically. And that particle, the wave associated with the particle, reflects the structure of the particle at any scale. So the Earth is a particle at a certain scale, and it has a waveform associated with it. Now, the electromagnetic or the magnetosphere is something different, but I would say that it's part of that field,
Mm-hmm.
not the whole thing, but it's like,
It's suggestive that there's another, like the fact that there is an EMF field around a planet is suggestive of the fact that there is something else there that's more than just the physical. Like,
yeah, exactly.
and
Yeah,
that,
it's
but the morphogenetic interaction between the planets and the human bodies, or the bodies on the planet, is premised on there being another layer or another something beyond even just the electromagnetic field.
yeah, definitely.
But the fact that that exists is suggestive that there's more there than what meets the eye, basically.
Yeah, yeah. It's there's it's this is not the sort of thing where we can prove that this exists, but David Bohm has his theory of pilot waves and the implicate order is a mathematical system which supports this idea of an underlying field where everything is connected,
Mm.
and it's like the manifestations emerge out of that field. Now, why would they emerge out of that field? It's like the solar system. We are a product of this solar system, and this whole thing started out. I was talking about how the solar system is a photosynthetic organism. Photosynthetic has to do with light. Plants need light, and I'm saying that the Earth, with its um, um, biosphere, the biosphere of Earth it's predominantly plant-based. It's a photosynthetic biosphere primarily. And if you look at the plants, a plant is a manifested organism, but it's not. Where does the plant end? It's like you can have a plant in a pot, and you say, well, there it is, but that plant wouldn't be alive without light, and the light that it's using, unless I guess you could have an artificial light, but most plants are getting their light from the sun, and they're actually, you can't take away the sun. The sun is connected to that plant. It's part of that plant in a certain sense. In the same way that the moon is having an impact on that plant. It's David Bohm. I love David Bohm because he talks about holes. You have to think in holes, and when you start to think in holes, then everything is connected, and you see how they have to be connected. Things don't exist in isolation, especially living bodies. It's like animal bodies are not directly connected to the sun, but they're connected to the atmosphere created by the plants. So all of it is mixed up in this, and we have a particular organization, and it's what I refer to as a modular organization, where you've got different modules arranged in a vertical orientation when you're standing upright, and it just so happens that the organization where we have the sun as the head, Earth as the heart, it works out that there's correspondences across scale where you can start to see how the solar system somehow is providing information to our bodies to reflect the organization of the solar system that we emerge out of.
So this, can you be more, can you give an example of this correspondence? So you said the sun connects with the brain or the head,
Sun is the head,
or crown chakra.
Crown chakra, yeah.
And then So that would make Mercury would correlate with what, the third eye
No,
chakra or
Mercury is the thyroid,
thyroid. Okay.
and
And
Venus is the
Venus,
thymus.
thymus. Okay.
Earth is the I call it the heart chakra,
Mm-hmm.
but it's really much bigger than just the heart.
Mm-hmm.
And this you have to consider that what is the heart? The heart is not this organ that exists independent of the blood, for instance, right? And also, it's like you've got the heart is actually part of the lungs in the same way that if you look at the brain, the structure of the brain, you've got a brain stem with two cerebrum on either side and cerebellum, and also you've got these lobed organs associated with the central organ, and the lungs are like the brains of the heart.
Mm.
And then you've got it's like the heart is actually it's divided into four. It's four quadrants, and you've got above and below, left and right, and you can see a similar correspondence with the Earth. It's like the Earth has, once again, it's a photosynthetic organism. So there's the circle of illumination. Let me show you this next spread here. I lost there it is. This is the circle of illumination. This above and below this line here, and then you've got left and right, and you can see it in the body here, right? Well, this is kind of not fully developed actually. Let's I'm going to skip out of the tour mode here.
Well, wait. Let's just let's just put a bookmark here.
Yep.
And then just because I want us to just focus on the man stuff right now.
Yep.
And not get too into the Earth quadrants and all that kind of stuff.
All right.
And then jump forward if we're done talking on this on slide 3 and 4. I mean, we could talk more here. Then let's jump forward to chakra, and talk about chakra stuff.
All right.
But stay in the tour. Okay. Cool. Because the only way to start the tour is to close the app and reopen it and all that kind of stuff. So.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So, is there anything that we want to talk about on this slide? Other than. Well, can we go back? Let's go back one slide. Yep. So one thing that I think about here is there's a lot of lately I've been doing this morning chakra opening and activation meditation. And there are a number of them on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And you go through the different chakras, starting with the root chakra, and always the root chakra is red. Then the sacral chakra is orange.
Yep.
Solar plexus is yellow. Earth is green. Vocal cord chakra is blue. Third eye is indigo, and then crown is violet.
Right.
So this is the standard New Age chakra color system, coordinate system.
Right.
So obviously this is different. So, but I think people who are familiar with that are probably the people who are going to most be intrigued by this, because there's an obvious correlation there.
Yes.
And then there are there are plenty of other correlations between the chakras and the planets. We were just looking at one today where the sun was in the chest and the moon was in the head, and
the sun was a heart chakra.
Things are all mixed up.
The moon was the crown chakra, which how the heck do you come up with?
Yeah, makes no sense. So I just want to kind of reference those, because those are kind of some, but especially the existing, the rainbow, the 7 colors of the rainbow from root to crown.
And I've seen people put Venus in the heart chakra because it's associated with love.
With love, right?
And the heart, if you You hurt
Right.
somebody, you love them. So
Right.
that's the correspondence, right?
Yeah, which, all these things make sense, but it seems
No,
like
they
what you
don't actually, but
well, on a conceptual
on a
level.
very superficial level, yeah.
Yeah. But what you're getting at here is a more direct, like, proximity, sun at the top, and then all the others lined up through the body on like a very, you know orbit, like, level of orbit correlation.
Yeah.
So another consequence, not consequence, but another, just kind of correlating this with kind of the current standard, whatever, average YouTube chakra correlation is, and not just, and beyond just like YouTube, but my understanding of, Eastern chakra sense is that there are 7 of them,
Yep.
but
7
here,
main chakras.
several main chakras. Whereas here we're talking, what, there are 9 planets, and if you include the sun, then you're talking 10 different chakras. So can you speak to that kind of contrast or correlation, or like why so many? And then if the earth is the heart chakra, that leaves 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 below the heart. And often there's just like one root, one sacral, one solar. That's 3. So
Yep. I mean, this is a hypothesis,
okay.
but it's a hypothesis based upon, I think that the whole idea of chakras in the first place, and this idea has been around for, as far as I know, like thousands of years, right?
Mm.
If you look at old Tibetan teachings, they talk about chakras and Ida Pingala and Shushuma and all these terms related to energy and things in the body which are not obviously there on dissection, for instance, right? You don't find a chakra, you don't find Ida Pingala energy channels or these sort of things. But somehow I believe that people in deep meditation intuited these structures, and I believe that we are the solar system. So we have a knowledge of these chakras because that's who we are.
Mm-hmm.
In a sense, it's like, maybe it sounds, presumptuous to say that you're the solar system, because no, you're just that body over there. No, no more than the plant is just that thing in a cup.
Mm.
It's part of the solar system. It's like it requires the sun to live in the same way that we require that thing. It's part of us. We're part of it. And so if you assume that we don't just manifest this form out of arbitrary weirdness, right? There's got to be some reason for our organization. And you look at the organization of the solar system and you go, well, maybe there's correspondences, and maybe it has to do with, if you put the sun at the center, as the sun is like the governor of the solar system. It keeps all the bodies in motion, and it's aware of all of them because it's at the center. Mm-hmm. Well, that fits with the brain. The brain is, in contact with the rest of the body, and the pituitary gland is in my system, and I talk about this in my book, Metagaya. So the pituitary is actually the center of the sun in a certain sense, or the center of the crown chakra. So and the pituitary is like the conductor of the endocrine orchestras, is one term that it's referred to. And all of these other planets or chakras in the body would correspond to endocrine organs in the body. So just as the endocrine system, the pituitary sends out and is aware of all of the endocrine secretions of all the other organs. So the sun is aware of, through its gravitational and electromagnetic forces, aware of all the planets. And if you just look for correspondences, you can find them as physiological correspondences. And the heart chakra, the earth, is the one that I've developed out the most in terms of the four quadrants and the circle of illumination, the left and right side, and the seasons alternating back and forth is the alternation of the swara, which has to do with Ida and Pingala. If you look at these old texts of Ida Pingala, they talk about subtle energy channels in the body where they alternate from side to side.
I think, would it be helpful in talking about that to look at the chakra tour slide?
Sure.
Shall we just zoom ahead and jump there? I'm also going to pause the recording here for a second. I'm going to steal the mouse here for a second. Okay.
All right. So I'm going to rip through here. Inside. Procession. Outside. Helio. So here we go. This is the next one will be the first of the chakra modes. And I just want to go back and highlight this transition. This is Thomas Spellman at his finest work right here. Look at this transition. Is that beautiful? So, and here's the correspondences across scale here. So you can see the sun is up there in the head, and this is the heart chakra. And so you got the left, here's the left side of the body, right side of the body. And this disc-like structure is, it's in the same plane as the circle of illumination. So it's perpendicular to the axis passing through the sun and the earth. And you can see how the earth, the axis, is making this circle relative to that plane. And here's the lungs above and the digestive system below. And this is the organization. This is and the monad, the monad calendar clock allows you to measure these planetary photosynthetic biorhythms of the heart chakra. So one day is equivalent to the beating of the heart. A lunar cycle is equivalent to the breath, the exhale. Here's the exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale. So you got a 29.5 day lunar cycle, which is the equivalent of the breath of this being. And the other, there's three main biorhythms, and one is, those two are familiar. The breath and the heartbeat are familiar with everybody. But what most people are not familiar with is the swara. And the swara has to do with Ida Pingala. And I learned about this through a book called Swara Yoga, The Tantric Science of Brain Breathing. Great title. And apparently, it's based upon this idea that over the course of the day, if you breathe on the back of your hand, you will notice that the breath passing through your nostrils is not always, it switches from, for a while the left nostril will be active and the right side will be almost closed, and then it'll switch over and the right will be active, open, and the left will close. And what this book told me was that it had a lot to do with your eating cycle. It's like, and Ida Pingala has everything to do with sympathetic and parasympathetic activity in the body. So Ida is associated with the parasympathetic. Pingala is associated with the sympathetic. So when you have a meal, you're in Ida. That's digestion. So the blood is in your digestive system, and you should be resting. You're relaxed, and you want to allow that blood to do its activity and digest your food. Then when that's done, an hour or two later, then you should switch over to sympathetic activity. And then you're active, you're out running around and burning off all that energy. Your right nostril is open. Then you get hungry again, you eat, you switch back to the left nostril. And you alternate, you should have on average about 3 alternations of Ida Pingala over the course of the daylight hours. And then when you're sleeping, you're in Ida versus Pingala is, there's cycles within cycles, in other words. And those cycles are equivalent to, it's like the right side of your body is Pingala, left side is Ida. And so when it's like summer is active. So summer is, when summer is on the left side of the body, that's Ida is active. When it's in the right side of the body, Pingala is active. And so that seasonal back and forth tilting of this above and below the circle of elimination is the Swara activity. So there's 3 biorhythms: solar day, lunar month, seasonal year.
Mm-hmm.
And you have equivalent cycles in your human body: heartbeat, breath, Swara.
Mm-hmm.
So this is, to me, I don't know if this is proof, but it's a very good indication of how we are related to the solar system. This is, we share the same form. We're going to have the same biorhythms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I think there's a beauty and a poetry and there's like meaning here. And I think this is something that in our modern science based, there's kind of like this zeitgeist, or there's kind of like the dominant paradigm of our current time is science. And so only science proven things are valid and everything else is suspect. This is kind of like not one size fits all, but kind of like this lens. We have to look at everything through a scientific lens. And there are a lot of things that don't have scientific or mathematical proofs to go with them. And there's a lot of beauty and a lot of poetry. And like this, like the correlation between the heartbeat, breath, and Swara with these 3 planet-based things, to me, is on more of this level of a poetic or meaning correlation. And it doesn't necessarily need, like, it's like, even the word proof is kind of irrelevant in the sense that it's suggestive of a different lens to be looking at it through. And then whereas looking at the lens through beauty or meaning, it's self-referencing, or it's like the correlations that you outlined are there if you can see
what
them.
math do you need?
Huh?
What math do you need?
Right. I mean, it's not a mathematical thing.
Not a mathematical
it's
thing.
a correlation of meaning.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's visual. There it is. So it's
Yeah.
like, look at it. Okay, so there's no mathematics going on there. I mean, there are numbers, but.
Well, sure.
But yeah.
Okay. So this really emphasizes the correlation of the earth to the heart chakra.
Yes. We don't have the other chakras available yet. I mean, the word monad indicates that any of these planets could form a similar thing. You'd have them located at their place in the body. We've only got the earth one worked out yet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
there are other correlations. What's an example of another correlation between an organ in the human body and one of the other planets?
Well, for instance, Venus and Mars, right, are on either side of Earth.
Okay.
And strangely enough, those are the two um, planets that don't have detectable magnetospheres.
Mm.
Now, there's speculation that they did at one time have magnetospheres and that they might have lost them sometime in the distant past. And I suspect that that is the case. I think that they did. And one of the, it's like if you look at the correspondences, Venus corresponds to the thymus gland, and Mars corresponds to the spleen.
Mm-hmm.
And those two organs are unusual because both of them are essential for embryonic development.
Mm.
But at a certain point, it's like the thymus is very, very important for forming blood cells up until I forget what stage of embryonic development. But after, like, I think the 6th month or something like that, it starts to regress.
Hmm.
And basically the thymus in an adult is just it's just fatty tissue. It's not actually, or it's not active as a endocrine organ any longer. Right? And the spleen is also involved in, it's part of the endocrine system in that it's involved with the bloodstream and structuring and functioning of the bloodstream. It is involved even as an adult, but it's not essential. You can get involved in an accident and they take your spleen out and you're fine, basically. Right? So I think that this is, it has correspondence with this Metagaia, this large solar system body. It indicates that at a certain point in the development of these bodies, they did have magnetospheres, just like they were active, endocrinely active.
Mm-hmm.
And then when their magnetosphere went away, they formed bodies that are no longer endocrinely active, but they're still involved in the structuring of the form of this body because they still have that underlying morphogenetic field.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the magnetosphere is on top of the morphogenetic field.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's, the manifestation goes from the most diffuse, the 0 point field sort of thing out to physical bodies, but there's stages in between of, the magnetosphere is somewhere in between there, and then even deeper is the quantum, entangled field of information, I think.
And so the next planet after Mars would be what, Jupiter?
Jupiter.
So what's the correspondence with Jupiter?
Jupiter is the adrenal gland.
Okay.
And Jupiter has the adrenal gland is made up of two parts. There's an adrenal medulla and there's an adrenal cortex. And the adrenal medulla is basically nervous tissue. And so it's like the brain. It's like a tiny little brain inside the abdomen, right? And so
which is interesting because some people think of Jupiter as almost like a mini sun, like it could even theoretically have been a sun, or
exactly,
I don't know.
Right?
It's like almost there, but not there.
Yeah, if it was a little bit bigger, it would have had enough mass to collapse and form an actual functioning sun.
Ignition, it would have have ignited. Interesting.
Yep. So, but it's the solar plexus.
Mm-hmm.
Solar plexus. It's a
right.
solar body. So it's the solar plexus chakra is what it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the adrenal medulla is the planet itself, and the cortex is its satellite system, surrounding satellite system. And if you look at the cortex of the adrenaline gland, it's divided into three layers, and those three layers secrete different endocrine hormones. The gonadotropins, steroids, the what is it? Adrenaline comes from the interior, the medulla. But anyway, there's also, if you look at the Jupiter's satellite system, you'll find that there are also three distinct categories of satellites. There's an inner grouping of satellites. I think there's 4 or 7 of them that have a they're basically in the plane of the celestial equator of that planet, and they're moving in a prograde fashion. And then there's a second group of planets that are they have a tilt relative to the celestial equator. And then there's a third layer even beyond that, which are moving retrograde. So, there's, if you look for these correspondences, you're going to find, poetic correspondences that hint of morphological similarities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the 3 layers of the moons correlating with the 3 different parts of the organ, like that is
very strange.
Yeah, and that's significant. There's not any other organ that has that, and there's not any other planet that has those 3 very distinct pieces. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, I talk about, I make, there's, it is poetic in a certain sense, and so it's not like it's not proof of anything.
Sure.
But when you look at the big picture, then it just makes sense that this has to be this way.
Mm-hmm.
That we don't have this form for no reason at all, and if it would make sense that the environment we grow up in with its, we now know that empty space is filled with all these fields from all of these bodies surrounding us. What are those fields doing? They're providing information about our form.
And also just increasingly, like the recent, in the past few years, the Nobel Prizes for the quantum entanglement experiments are proving that there's this other layer of, there's a lot of different ways to think about it. I think about it as another layer of symmetry or connectedness or interaction that is actually the background within which the vector potential, like if you get into electromagnetics, the lowest level of electromagnetics or something that we can measure is the vector potential. But like when there's a podcast in which Carver Mead is explaining this entanglement experiment and why it was like listening to him explain is the first time like I really began to get a sense of there being this other layer, because listening to him explain it, it's like in this experiment there's this forward in time and backward in time happening between the two, the two parts of the apparatus, that the only way for the particle to get from point A to point B is if there was some like 2-directional communication happening. But that's, we're limited to thinking of it that way because we're limited to the speed of light as the fastest thing that like the vector potential propagates at the speed of light. And the only way for this resonance to get set up to allow the particle to move is if there was like communication happening in both directions at the speed of light. But if there's this other layer of reality that is much more instantaneous, where there's a symmetry or a resonance that is instant, like more instantaneous at the moment that the resonance locks into place. At that point, yeah, there is a two-directional resonance, so to speak, being propagated in both directions, but it's not forward and backward in time. It's just more instantaneous to less instantaneous at some level, is the way I think about it. And so the fact, to simplify it, the fact that there is this emergence of new scientific experiments that are proving that there's something else going on, you know,
A lot of
a
something
lot
going
of
on.
something, entanglement, just
Yep.
all like this is very new layer of scientific experiment that wasn't around when Einstein and Niels Bohr had their debate, about it's all statistics, or Einstein was wanting to say that like God doesn't roll dice. There's something going on there. We're just not able to measure it yet. But we're just beginning to be able to measure something else is going on there. And to me, this idea of the morphogenetic resonance, or this like interaction between the planets and the organs, is happening, this entanglement or interaction is happening on this other more subtle or more instantaneous, more simultaneous level of reality that we're only barely beginning to be able to measure or figure out is actually there. And my sense is also like in the way we're thinking about it is still very much in almost like a communication, like quantum communication or quantum entanglement. Like these two particles are entangled because they somehow were connected and then they're moved apart. That implies a very much of a like almost linear in time or linear relationship. Like they were connected and then they were moved apart, and that's why they're entangled. But what it kind of leaves out is this model of reality where there's this other layer of interaction and connectedness that's going on continuously, and isn't just this other layer where there's some almost like void except for things that got entangled and then are now entangled and now they're interacting with each other. It implies that there's this whole ocean of interaction and yeah, symmetry and entanglement across, you know, time and spatial scales way beyond what these little experiments are able to suggest.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this speed of light thing, this transfer of information, they say you can't transmit information faster than the speed of light. They're talking about modulated information like Morse code or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the information that I'm talking about is morphogenetic information. It's form, information about form. It's like a chair has a form. And if you imagine this, a chair on a huge scale, it's like if you move any part of the chair, the whole chair is moving.
Mm-hmm.
The whole form is inherent in every bit of that thing. I don't know how to. You're not having to transmit the information. This is a chair, like Morse code.
Mm.
You're.
It's inherent.
It's
in
inherent
the
in the whole structure
of
of the thing itself. You know.
Mm-hmm. Right, which gets at like the positions of the planets at any given moment is derivative
exactly.
of where they were in the previous moment and the previous moment and the previous moment, and
the implicate versus the explicate.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like
the
within the
planets
implicate.
aren't broadcasting messages to each other of like, hey, I'm about to move over here, so
Right.
update your gravity model of where we're about to
You have
be.
to do that in the app, but
Right.
not in the.
Yeah, in reality, there's a continuous symmetry or entanglement or connectedness between them that is unfolding simultaneously and continuously.
Yeah, it's a form that is developing and growing, but it's it's whole.
Mm-hmm.
And the wholeness is what is in the field. It's like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's hologrammic. I mean, you throw these words around and it's hard to describe all this stuff at that level, but
right. Cool.
Let's look at the next, I love this next slide here.
Oh, wait, sorry. Let's get your cursor back. Hold on. Okay.
So this is okay. I'm gonna skip to the next slide also.
Okay.
This is the two trees, and this is once again in reference to the fact that I believe that this being, this solar system being, is best described as a photosynthetic organism. Now, mostly, if you think of what is a photosynthetic organism, you think a plant.
Mm-hmm.
But this is like a plant being on a huge scale, and these trees represent the biosphere, the photosynthetic biosphere of planet Earth. So it's not just one tree. It's like, but the two trees represent the two phases of photosynthesis. And there's a light phase and a dark phase. So, and the light phase is equivalent to the lungs. The dark phase is equivalent to the digestive system. And if you look at the...
Now, when you say phase, are you talking about like we're seeing the hour hand spinning around?
No, I'm talking about that physiologically, photosynthesis is known to take place in two different
I see.
phases.
Daytime and nighttime. Yep.
Yeah, daytime and nighttime. One requires light.
Mm-hmm.
Light is it interacts with the molecule chlorophyll molecule, which then generates ATP through a system of stepping down electrons and stuff like this to generate a molecule which has energy.
Mm-hmm.
And then that energy is then used in the dark phase, to build plant material. So it extracts carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. Imagine like a whale, passing through a sea of what are the whales eat?
Phytoplankton or something.
Plankton, yeah, they eat plankton. Plants are like that. They're extracting all of the material of a plant that you see, a big tree. That's not extracted out of the earth. It's extracted out of the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
Carbon dioxide. Then they link the carbon molecules together to form sugars and starch,
mm-hmm.
right? And the plant is releasing oxygen up in the light phase, mm-hmm. into the atmosphere, into the lungs, right? Mm-hmm. Look at the correspondences across scale here, right? So we breathe in the oxygen that those plants are releasing in the light phase, mm-hmm. into our lungs. Mm-hmm. Direct correspondence, across scale. The digestive system is, we then use the oxygen that we extract from breathing to create the ATP. It's like every cell in your body requires ATP, adenosine triphosphate, to perform respiration, which is what allows us to generate the ATP molecules, which then operate every molecular machinery in the cell. If you're a muscle, there's a ratchet that it's like you have to put in an oxygen molecule, it's a machine. If you want it to operate, you have to put in a quarter. Each quarter is an oxygen molecule.
Mm-hmm.
And then it can do its ratcheting activity. If it's making an enzyme or some other thing, it requires that ATP in order to churn it out. It's like all of our, so oxygen is the equivalent for us that light is for the plant. So it's a stepping down, but it's also that complementarity of it. So we share,
and plants too at night, they're respiring just like we do. Like they actually take in oxygen and emit carbon dioxide at night.
Exactly, right?
They respire on that and then burn their sugar. So the sugar is the energy storage. Is like the sunlight at night. The sugar is the sunlight at night. That they've saved up, and then they burn it, and it's just they produce more sugar and emit more oxygen than they use. So
Yep.
so there's an excess for us.
It's we're complementary to this thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's the bottom line. It's like and it's so clear that this image. I love this image. It reminds me of that I don't know how to pronounce it. Yegedstrael.
Oh yeah.
The tree of it's like, and it's like here we are in the Garden of Eden. It's like the tree of life is the top one. The tree of knowledge of good and evil is the bottom one. It's like this is such an inherent, and in Genesis, it's like God made man in His own image. This is the image. This is it right here. And then now we can go back to the previous slide, and this is called the hydrologic cycle. And you've got the sun heating water on the surface of the earth. What that does is when you heat water, it evaporates. It rises up into the atmosphere. And then that water, this earth is spinning too fast to really appreciate this cycle, but as the earth is spinning, that water vapor in the atmosphere gets carried around to the dark side of the earth. And it's cooler there. So when it's heated, it's okay to be up in the atmosphere. When it's cooled, it falls as rain.
And you can really see this. Like here in Nevada County in the late summer, it's when it's super hot. By the end of the day, oftentimes there'll be these rain clouds rolling in from off the ocean, and there'll be thunderstorms and rain in the afternoon and evening. And then I was just in like Atitlan, same thing. Like it's beginning of the rainy season, and morning would be clear, and then by the end of the day it's all overcast, and then we'd have rain usually at dusk or after dark.
Yep. That's the hydrologic really cycle. It's a circulatory system. It's a planetary circulatory system. And the other thing that you've got to be aware of is that this only works if you've got plants growing on the planet. It's like you can have water on a planet, and you put that planet at the same distance from the sun. If there's no plants, you're not going to have a hydrologic cycle because rain requires what's called an infusoria, which is there's a seed at the center of every raindrop, a literal organic molecule which water condenses around like a seed for a pearl, So it's like, also you'll notice that a rainforest, it generates the rain. It's not growing because rain is falling on it. Rain is falling because it's growing.
Yeah, and there are places like the greening of the desert in the Middle East where, like, sure, once that greening process takes root,
yep,
then it actually rains more. In places where there are trees, and the more there is foliage, the more rain actually falls there.
You got to look at the Earth and the solar system as it's a living organism. That's the only way to make sense of this thing. It's like when you think of this as a dead planet, and we just happen to have this, very thin, tiny layer of a biosphere growing on the surface of this thing. How did it get here, right? It's just such a miracle. It's so weird. It's impossible, right? But if you just realize that, no, this whole thing is a living organism to begin with. And I actually believe that it's been alive from the beginning. That life has always been around. Life did not emerge after some big bang. Life is the form that you know, there is no form without life.
Hmm.
So, and life is consciousness. It's like consciousness had to be there from the beginning. Consciousness didn't arise somewhere. Consciousness is making choices, it's intelligence. Somehow, it's like the who selected the what are those units of like gravitational force and the big G and all these units have to be precisely selected to make life possible.
Mm-hmm.
Well, life selected those units from the very beginning because that's what is doing the selecting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you also believe that consciousness is like fundamental, right?
I do. Um, I think what you were just getting at is more of like a primordial formational, like there's something about consciousness that is actually what causes matter to condense in to create, let's say, you know, cosmic dust would condense. I mean, maybe like I've heard people talk about it as like the implosive rather than explosive force, or not, force is the wrong word, but or yeah, that there's some kind of primordial, what we call consciousness has an overlap with some kind of like moving inward type of
Vortex of
vortex process, or yeah. I mean, it's hard to, for me, when I think about consciousness as being primary, it's easier for me to think about it in our current form of the universe, you know. And it gets more just into the relationship between consciousness and information, and our ability to access information directly across time and space, or about time and space, which to me is evidence for consciousness being primary, in the sense that, yeah, consciousness can is more non-local. Consciousness is non-local. Like, it's very local through our physical senses, but we can also just directly access information about reality in a way that's not our directly through our physical senses. And that to me is evidence for and an experience that one can have if one explores that and experiments with it, that is consciousness transcending time and space. Um, but as for like consciousness being a primordial template, or that actually causes or brings, let's say, the universe into being, you know, it, to me it makes sense, but it's also on such a level that's being like, it's hard to, we're dealing with such levels of abstraction, and like, I mean, there has to be something that causes it to form, you know.
there's always going to be some mystery that we're not going to be able to,
Yeah.
you know, get to.
But, you know, I mean, it is like our hour. There is religious Genesis wording, you know, theory that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, which is kind of like the Om sound, or this like primordial vibration or carrier wave or something, you know, which reminds me of cymatics, where you have this just random assortment of sand grains, and then you apply some tone to the plate, and then everything forms into a structure,
Yep.
you know. That to me is suggestive of this idea of coherence, that is like the sound wave is coherent. It's like a specific frequency. It's not white noise. Like, what would white noise do with a plate of sand? I don't know. That's an interesting question.
That is an interesting.
Versus a specific frequency. Like, the frequency is much more coherent than white noise. And so for a specific frequency to cause the sand grains to take a specific structure or form is suggestive of this idea of like consciousness or coherence being what brings about the structure of space and time.
I know I've thought a lot about that, the Genesis story. And the Genesis creation story is very strange, right? Chapter 1 is because they first talk about the creation of light before the sun and moon aren't created until the fourth day, right? So there's a creation of light and darkness for the first day. Then there's a creation of the firmament, and I think that I guess I don't know what exactly they're talking about, but the third day is the creation of plants.
Oh, interesting.
Right? Now, that to me is like, this is before there's the sun and moon. Like I said, the sun and moon are created on the fourth day. And like we were talking about earlier, plants need the sun. So what the heck are they talking about? I mean, maybe they were just primitive people and they made this stuff up and there's no meaning behind that. But what I think they're talking about is, I think that if you look at the creation of the firmament, I think that the first 2 days is the creation of an electromagnetic standing wave, basically. And then on the third day, I think there's a disruption of that, such that the firmament separates out and forms two vortexes, basically, generating, I guess, what I would call plasma trails through the electromagnetic media. And those plasma trails are what I think they're referring to as plants. Because if the plasma trails are circulating between the sun and also the earth, it's like the plants give rise to the earth, is kind of the way that they describe it on that third day, the way, maybe it's my interpretation. So, and that's also very similar to Rudolf Steiner. You know who he is? A mystic, German mystic. He says that plants don't grow out of the earth. Earth grows out of plants. And I've always loved that idea. You know, it's like, to me, and that kind of fits with that third day. It's like you have creation of plants, these plasma trails which gradually accumulate so that the earth basically is what manifests out of all this plasma filling up the void. So, cool. And then you have, with the sun and the moon, then you have the opportunity to turn those plants into more traditional plants, where they're responding to, in other words, they gain like identity as plants and longevity as a particular type of plant, instead of just these weird plasma things that are coiling up and growing within this weird sea of electromagnetism. I don't know.
Cool.
Anyway, it's a weird speculation.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Sweet.
Nice.